This is another episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. It's another amazing interview on the Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC podcast. I am so proud to have back on my show one of the best comics ever. I mean, he's been around for too many years to think about. But let's get him on the show, and then I'll kind of go over everything and catch you guys up. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the podcast, Tom Dreesen. Tom, to get you on the podcast twice just feels like so honored. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to do it. I had fun the last time.
Well, we got a chance to talk about your early days in Chicago and some of your work, but let me catch the audience up real quick. Tom Dreesen is famous for so many things, but I'm going to mention just a couple. He was the official opening act of Mr. Frank Sinatra for many, many years. He also authored a book recently called Still Standing. We'll talk about that. But he's had over 500 TV appearances. He did over 60 spots on The Tonight Show. He was on Letterman a lot and co-hosted a lot. He is one of the premier stand-up comics of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and beyond. And it's just so exciting to get a chance to chat with you again. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing real good. This is my 55th year in show business.
Wow.
And I'm still out there doing it. I'm having a lot of fun. And oftentimes when I'm asked, like, what's the secret of longevity? It's quite simple. Just keep moving. But also, if you're lucky that you found the work that you love and you can continue doing it into your senior years, then that's the blessing of them all. And I found the work that I love many years ago, 55 years ago. And to be still doing stand-up and going out there on the road to my one-man show is one thing. But when I come off the road, I go over to the Comedy Store, and Bill Burr and Sebastian Maniscalco and I are on sometimes there. And then I go over to the Laugh Factory in Hollywood. And the audiences are young, and my material I can still write material that relates to the younger generations as well. So that's what's so exciting in my life and why it's fun to get out of bed every morning, you know.
Well, you are so correct, sir. We're talking about an industry, stand-up comedy, that we've both been in for over 4 or 5 decades. And it is one of those great institutions where when you love your work, you can do it forever. Historically, somebody like George Burns really sets that in place. But even more recently, Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno, who have more money than God, are still out there getting into clubs, getting into concerts, and doing comedy every week because they just love this industry, this art form.
I just about 2 weeks ago, I worked with Jay over at a club called Flappers in Burbank. You know, he goes there every weekend. He's like loyal to that club for some reason. But so he goes there every weekend, and I go there on occasion. I'll drop in and do a set, and then Jay and I talk afterward because I've known him for almost 50 years. I met him when he was in comedy about 4 months. I was working at the Boston Playboy Club, and a comedian named Mike Preminger brought Jay there and introduced him to me, and he had a big goofy hat on, and he had glasses, real thick glasses, and he'd been doing stand-up about 4 months at that time.
Well, I had a chance to work with Jay. He came to work for me still early in his career. He was already headlining, but not only did he work my chain of comedy clubs, but I was able to do a couple large sold-out concerts with him. And then he kind of just went beyond me. I was a stepping stone in his very successful life. But what's interesting is about the people that we have interacted with in the beginning. Now, I referenced that you spent decades working with Frank Sinatra, working some of the best rooms, some of the best shows around the world. But we didn't touch on in the first conversation that you also must have had a chance to kind of hang out and be friends with people like Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., the Rat Pack group. There was a lot of celebrity and politicians in Frank's universe. Was that exciting, intimidating, fun?
All those things. I toured with Sammy Davis for 3 years as his opening act before I ever met Frank.
Oh, okay.
And Sammy Sammy would tell me stories about Frank and how much he knew I was a fan, and he would tell me how much he admired Frank and what Frank did for him, and how Frank broke down the racism in Las Vegas, where he told them, if Sammy can't stay in the hotel, then I can't stay there either. Because at one time, the black acts could go work in the hotels back in the 50s and stuff, but they had to stay. Sammy called it Color Town. They couldn't stay in the hotel. They had to stay at the other end of town, what they call Color Town. And Frank put a stop to that, as well as other things. So Sammy really adored Frank and told me a lot of stories. And I did the Dean Martin roast. And you mentioned George Burns earlier. I actually was on the roast with George Burns one time where we were roasting him. But I did the Dean Martin roast, got to know Dean and played golf with him and did some shows with him, a couple of corporate things. And really liked him a lot. I liked him a lot. And his family and I are still real close. His children, I introduced his one daughter, Gail, to her husband. He just passed away recently. But so I've known the family. And yeah. And as far as intimidating, when you're touring with a guy like Frank Sinatra, and I think I explained this to you the last time we interviewed, you have to think what your job is. There's 20,000 people in an arena, and in Hawaii, 40,000, and who all came to see him. And you got to go out there. And I'd say, Scott, I think I may have told you this last time, but it bears repeating. I'll say, Scott, it's 5 minutes before showtime. We're at the, say, Nassau Coliseum in New York. I say, Scott, there's 20,000 people out there. I want you to go out there for the next 40 minutes, Scott, and stand in the center of that arena where they're all around you, not proscenium, we're out in front of you. They're all around you, 20,000 people. And I want you to hold their attention for the next 40 minutes, Scott. Oh, one more thing, Scott. I want you to hold their attention, but I want you to make them laugh for the next 40 minutes. And one more thing, Scott. I want you to make them laugh when you want them to laugh. I want you to pull the strings on the emotions of 20,000 people. No props, no tricks, no charts, no special arrangement, no special lighting, no orchestra, just you and 20,000 people. And one more thing, Scott, not one of them came to see you. So that's what was intimidating. And then, we did shows at the White House. I mean, wherever you went with Frank, wherever you toured with Frank, whatever city you were in, the who's who of the governors, the politicians, heads of states, heads of mafias, in that room were all the power brokers. And so every night you walked out on stage, and sometimes like staying in his home, I'd stay in his home like 5-6 times a year. And the house guests, he had all these bungalows. The house guests would be Gregory Peck and his wife Veronique. It'd be Kirk Douglas and his wife Ann, Jack Lemmon and his wife Felicia. It'd be Clint Eastwood and whoever he was dating at the time, and Robert Wagner and Jill St. John. And these were people I saw in the movies when I was a little boy in Harvey, Illinois. I saw these people in the movies, and now I'm sitting at a dinner table with them. Tom, pass the butter, will you please?
Wow. That would be intimidating to me. Obviously, you spent many decades in that world, and I'm sure you weren't specifically starstruck. But out of all those celebrities and politicians, was there even one person that kind of set you back or you maybe wanted an autograph from?
It would have to be Frank because, he was so larger than life. But the reason I stayed with Frank all the years I did, he never knew how much in awe of him I was because I never let him see that. I was a bartender before I was ever in show business, and I picked up on personalities a lot. I worked in 2 neighborhood bars, and the moment I met him, I picked up on him. He didn't want another fan. He didn't like people gushing over him, so he didn't want another fan. He wanted a friend, and that's what I was. First he was the boss of this magnificent tour. And then he was like a buddy. We hung out late at night. He stayed up till dawn every night. He never went to bed till the sun came up. And then toward the end of his life, he was like a father to me and gave me a lot of advice. And I spent a lot of time with him. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I spoke at his funeral. And I miss him every day of my life, Scott, that's for sure.
Well, I think it's incredible and really amazing for you to have met and worked with all those incredible celebrities and politicians. And the one person that you were always in awe of was the one you were opening for and best friends with, Mr. Frank Sinatra. That's amazing. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of amazing stories in Tom Dreeson's book, Still Standing. And if you haven't had a chance, go to Amazon and pick it up. Tom, could you tell everybody a little bit about Still Standing?
Yeah, the subtitle is My Journey from Streets and Saloons to the Stage and Sinatra. And it's my journey, from the beginning. I had 8 brothers. It's a triumphant book, and that's why it's got over right now over 450 5-star reviews on Amazon. I'm really proud of it because even to this day, people are still buying the book, and I put it out a couple of years ago. But it's a triumphant book. There were 8 of us kids in a suburb on the south side of Chicago, Harvey, Illinois. And we lived in a shack, rat-infested, roach-infested shack. If you holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. If a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. We didn't have a bathtub, no bathtub and no shower, no hot water. And from a very early age, I shined shoes in taverns. I set pins in bowling alleys. I caddied in the summertime. I sold newspapers on the corner, all to help feed my brothers and sisters. And none of this do I regret. So that's all in the book. Because I came from a neighborhood where in those days there was no such thing as welfare. The mantra in the neighborhood is you only deserve in life what you work for. That's all you deserve in life is what you work for. And so that was the mantra in those days. And so us kids went out very early in life and, made money, to help bring money home to help feed the family. So, and that's what the book is about. And then all my rejections in my 4 years in the military and coming out and all the problems, a wife and 3 kids and going from job to job and never finding who it was. And then finally getting in the show business and realizing this is what I was put on the planet to do, to make people laugh. And then there were still rejections. As you know, Tim Reed and I were America's first black and white comedy team. History shows we were the last. There was never one after us. For 6 years, from 1969 to 1975, we toured the North and the South as the first black and white comedy team. That was in the Jim Crow South. But even up north, there were people that really wanted us to succeed, and there were people that didn't. Because there's a game people play in our societies called divide and conquer. And some people do not like seeing us get along. If we worked an all-black club where there was a black guy who hated white people, hated them with a passion, he wasn't mad at me. He was mad at Tim for being with me. If we worked an all-white club and a redneck hated black people, he wasn't mad at Tim. He was mad at me for being with Tim. So we put up a lot of that kind of nonsense. But that's in the book, and so many other things. My journey to finally getting on the Tonight Show, which changed my life. In 1975, wherever you went in America, people say, "What do you do for a living?" You say, "I'm a stand-up comedian." The next question out of their mouth was, "Oh yeah, have you ever been on Johnny Carson?" If you hadn't been on Johnny Carson, in those days you weren't considered a comedian. You might want to be one, but because one appearance on that show, Scott, and your life changed. 28 million people watched that show.
Well,
Freddie Prinze did one show and he got a sitcom the next day. I did one show and CBS signed me to a development deal the next day.
Well, and you ended up doing 60 appearances on The Tonight Show, so I think you're proof positive. First off, I love the fact that your story and your book is all about a merit-based life. You earned everything you have. You went from a shack to Sinatra. That is incredible journey. It didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of hard work and perseverance, and it took a lot of dedication to who you are and what you wanted to do. And I think that's an incredible story, and everybody should go out, and it's still available. It's very affordable. Go get the Still Standing book on Amazon from Tom Dreesen. But Tom, all those years in show business, and now you're retired, but you're still getting out and doing some shows at Flappers and a few other clubs. Is this something that you are making a point of doing every week or once a month? How much comedy are you still doing?
I'm not retired. I've never retired, and I never will retire.
I didn't mean to insult you.
Oh no, I know, but I don't blame you, because people might ask that because I'm not on national television much anymore. But I do a one-man show called "The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh." It's a 90-minute show that I do in theaters around the country, and it's just stand-up comedy. I would rather work theaters than comedy rooms, because theaters, people have their drinks out in front. They come and they sit down, and they're all right there in the palm of your hand. There aren't waiters and waitresses roaming in out of the aisles and all that. And it's such a great venue to work. But in stand-up comedy, the theater goes dark, and a screen comes out, and Dennis Farina, God rest his soul, introduces me on screen and all the things I've done up to this point. And then I walk out. I do about a half an hour stand-up comedy. Then I segue over to a bar on the stage that has a bottle of Jack Daniels on it. And, of course, with Frank's drink of choice. And I tell a funny story behind the bar, like I'm a bartender, and all the lights go out when the audience is laughing. All the lights go out, and on the screen, Frank is singing to me. I'm behind the bar. It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. You know, his song "One for My Baby." And when he gets to the chorus, he goes off screen and spotlight hits me. And now the audience is in a bar with me, and I've come home. And I tell him the first time I heard that voice, I was 10 years old, shining shoes in a bar in Harvey, Illinois, and he was on the jukebox. Then I take the audience from that little boy hearing Frank Sinatra on the jukebox in Harvey, Illinois, to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. And as I'm telling stories, pictures are coming on the screen, authenticating the story, and video of Frank and I. So it's really, it's all about the Tim and Tom years and the Tonight Show and touring with Sammy and Dean and finally getting to Frank.
Well,
and then I close with I take him to the funeral and sometimes have him in tears. And then I close with a very funny monologue, and I end it with there's a shot of Jack Daniels out between you and I. It's iced tea because I don't think, but I'll toast him. I'll say, I wish for all of you what Frank Sinatra wished for you. The very last song that he ever sang is that the best is yet to come. Good night, everybody. And you hear Frank Sinatra singing, the best is yet to come as you're leaving the theater.
Wow. Well, you pretty much just synopsized the whole show, but it's incredible, Tom, on not only have you touched the audience with comedy and humor as you always have, but with this final one-man show, you're bringing some emotion, sensitivity, and engagement with the audience. And I just know it's going to be heartfelt and touched. That's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, if you see it coming to a city near you, the man who made Sinatra laugh, Tom Dreeson's One Man Show, it's a must-see. Well, Tom, you seem to constantly be busy between your gigs and your book and your one-man shows. Is there any gigs or special projects coming up in the next year, let's say 6 months to a year, that on top of this, or are you just the one-man show is your focus?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Alex Caggiatani
and Paul Richmond
from the Education News Comedy Quiz podcast called Some of the Above.
Each month, Alex and I invite you to play along with two special guest contestants from the world of education as we ask questions about the latest school news.
If you want to laugh while you learn and learn while you laugh, this is the show for you.
So listen to the Education News Comedy Quiz now, because truly, this podcast will change your life.
You'll sleep better, your food will taste better, and you'll probably get promoted at work.
Well, no, I also give motivation talks for corporate America and at universities. And I do a special one for comedians called The Joy of Stand-Up Comedy and How to Get There. But I talk on 4 subjects: perception, visualization, self-talk, and develop a sense of humor. And I elaborate on those 4 points. And then I have a Q&A afterward. And so I'm doing that. In fact, there's a place in North Hollywood now called Comedy Chateau, and they're having a big comedy festival where comedians come from all around the country, wannabes mostly, and they have a week there, and I'm going to do a stand-up for them, and then I'm also going to give a motivation talk to them. That's next, like in about 2 weeks.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's not a TED Talk, it's a Tom Talk, and you get a chance to share some of your wisdom and experience to both enlighten and educate maybe the next group of comics coming up through the entertainment ranks. And as you pointed out, it is never an easy road. Well, Tom, it is so special to get a chance to share some of this with you. You have your one-man show, your book still standing, your amazing history with Frank Sinatra. Thanks so much for sharing all this with my audience. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to share a little bit of your stand-up comedy at the end of this. I won't pull the gig that you did at Motel 6, if that means anything.
You know, when I go to Laugh Factory, and now the Comedy Store does it, they film you, and so does the Comedy Chateau. They'll film your set, and before you get home, they'll send it to you. And then you can take 2 minutes off of that, or a minute, and put it on Instagram or TikTok. And a while back, there was a young audience, and I wanted to prove to some friends of mine that I said, this is 2 jokes that I wrote in 1977 and 78. And I went up on stage and I did them and got a huge laugh. And I put it on the Instagram. It got over 2 million hits, like 78,000 shares or something like that. And my point of that is I always have to tell people who do not know our business, and even comedians, there's no such thing as an old joke if you've never heard it. So
that's so true. My answer to that, Tom, is I use material old and new. And to me, trying to entertain an audience, the key phrase is funny is funny.
True. There's, I don't know how many times I have to explain this to people all the time about that. There's a brand new audience every 2 years, and every 2 years there's another group in there. You see kids today 19 when they're 21, they're going in the club. So all you have to there's only one rule in comedy, and you just expressed it. There's one rule in comedy: be funny, and that's the only rule you have.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot, Tom. Do you remember either one of those jokes?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Go ahead and share the joke from 1977.
One of them was, I said, my wife, I'm talking about my ex-wife, that we used to argue about the darndest things. I once said to her, what would you do if I won the lottery? She said, I'd take half and I'd leave you. I said, I won $12. Here's $6. Stay in touch. Now, that's on Instagram. And then with it, I think the other one was that I will say my wife did try to save the marriage. I came home one day, she was stark naked. She said, tie me up and you can do anything you want. So I tied her up and I went to play golf.
Well, that is perfect and a great way to segue into your material. Mr. Tom Dreesen, always an honor to talk with you. Thank you again for coming back on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. I'm going to have a little bit of great comedy material by Mr. Dreesen. Tom, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Scott. Anytime you want me, I'm available.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, get his book, Still Standing. Look for his show, The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh. And if you're in Southern California, he appears once in a while at Flappers and a couple of the other clubs. Keep an eye out for the one and only Tom Dreesen. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome, Scott. And by the way, they can go to tomdreesen.com. That has all the information that they want on me.
Oh, that's great to know. tomdreesen.com. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad we got that in there.
Okay, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a little bit of comedy by Tom Dreesen.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
I have a 32-year-old daughter I'm very proud of because she's so independent. She lives by herself in my house. She's got turtles all over the house. I think turtles might be the one dumbest pet a human being can have because, you can't tell if a turtle's dead or alive. A turtle will lay in one place for 10 days, and just when you're ready to throw it out, it'll make a move. I have a son just like that. The Heights had a little place, and they still have a little place called The Hill when I was going up the hill. Yeah. 55,000 Italians. 3 families. Saw one of my teachers. He said, you don't remember me, but I said, yes, I do. Your name is Richard Bruno. You teach algebra. He said, that's amazing. I said, listen to this. X to the 5th power times x to the 5th power is x to the 10th power, because in algebra, you don't multiply exponents, you add them. He said, that's incredible. I said, you know what else is incredible? That's the first time I've ever been able to use that since you taught it to me. If you played a word association game with me when I was growing up in Harvey, if you said tall, I'd say short. If you say black, I'd say white. If you said show business, I said Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. And the vice president of Harrah's Hotel, a man named Holmes Hendrickson, very powerful guy in those days, saw me, and he was talking to a guy with a cigar. He said, Tommy, come here. I went over and he said, Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin. Well, I recognize the name. That was Sinatra's lawyer. He said, Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen, and I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra. So they called me and they said, a week later, would you like to work 1 week with Frank Sinatra? And I thought, this is going to be fun. And the second night I was with him, we went out to dinner, and he laid down his knife and his fork in the middle of the meal. He said, I like your material, and I like your style. I'd like you to do a few other dates with me if you're interested. And I didn't say, let me check my calendar. I said, yeah. And it turned into 45, 50 cities a year for almost 14 years. Whether on the road or off the road, Frank didn't go to bed till the sun came up. And like I say, he wanted you, and that was fun for the first 10 or 12 years, but One night we landed in Fort Lauderdale. Squad cars and limousine rushed us to this hotel. Frank went inside, he went straight to the lounge. And I tiptoed out of the car and I went up to my room. I thought, great, I can play golf in the morning. I was in my room. I wasn't there 5 minutes, I heard. I opened the door and it's a big red-headed bellman. Looked like a linebacker. He said, Mr. Dreesen, Mr. Sinatra wants you downstairs in the lounge. I reached in my pocket, I pulled out $20. I said, could you tell him you couldn't find me? He said, Mr. Sinatra gave me $100 to tell you he wants you downstairs. Frank was a big tipper. Frank gave you $100. Whatever, if you brought him a drink, you got $100. He didn't show off, he'd slip it to you. You brought him a pack of cigarettes, you got $100. He was coming out of Mame San restaurant in Los Angeles one time, and the valet Parker pulled his car up, and Frank said, what's the biggest tip you ever got? And the kid said $100, and Frank gave him two $100 bills, and Frank said, by the way, who gave you $100? He said, you did last Friday, Mr. Sinatra.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.